Hey everyone, Joe here. In this episode, Scott and I had the honor of chatting with the fired up senior Shamon Seals, an Air Force senior enlisted leader who is currently the Air Force Air Mobility Command's enlisted professional military education and career assistance advisor functional manager. During our chat, we talked about the role vulnerability has in understanding and having tough conversations about ourselves, others, and the acknowledgement of systemic racism. We learned a lot during this discussion, and we know you will too. Enjoy!
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome back to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on all things life, learning, and leadership. This is Joe Bogdan, and I'm here with one of my best friends, Scott Green. How you doing, bro?
I am fantastic. How are you, sir?
I am doing very well, man, on this beautiful Saturday. There's 25-mile-per-hour winds out in Vacaville, which is awesome for my jog later on. Just add more resistance, right?
Exactly. It's no longer a jog, Joe.
Yeah.
It's running now.
Yesterday, I sat.
You graduated. No longer jogging.
The run yesterday, I woke up in the morning, I looked out the window, and I just stared out the window for 15 minutes because I saw the trees just freaking like going sideways. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but I'm proud that I did, man.
It's like a blow dryer.
Yeah. It's like a dog, right? When the dog looks out the window, it's like it's cold. It's like, I'm just going to poop in the house today. I'm not going out.
Yeah, we were out running some errands earlier, and like it's just hot, humid. It's like running around with a wet, hot blanket on you. It's yeah. You break a sweat so easily out here.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. But hey, Scott, we have a great guest today, an amazing guest and a fantastic human being. He is currently the Air Force Air Mobility Command's enlisted professional military education and career assistance advisor functional manager. And that's a lot of words at one time. So must be really important, right? the fired up senior, Shamon Seals. What is happening, bro? What is happening?
Chilling, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited. I've been anticipating this for the past month or so. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, that means a lot. Thanks, man. I know everybody's busy in different ways right now. And to us, it just means a lot that you took the time to sit down with us and have some just, bros talking about stuff that's important.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, hey, before we get into maybe some of the deeper parts of the conversation, we always like to start this off when we have a guest to learn a little bit about that person, right? Because I know I always learn from, it doesn't matter. Every airman has a story, and I learn a lot from it. Doesn't matter what the rank of that airman is. I glean wisdom from that person's story. And we love to hear a little bit, if you're willing to share, about how Shamon Seals became the Shamon Seals he is today.
Wow, that's a loaded question. I thought we said we on a time crunch here. No, but no. For those who may not know me, I hail from the South Side of Chicago, born and raised in the streets of Chicago. I went to High Park Career Academy, and I come up from a mixed family that was where I was divorced. My parents were divorced at the age of My parents were divorced when I was the age of 10, and then from there I had some stepbrothers and sisters. Quite a bit of a nice family, but blended family as well. But for the most part, like I grew up around sports, loving to have fun, super competitive. I was a silly kid. I always got in kind of trouble for being the class clown. I didn't really even take education serious at all, to be honest with you, man. I went to school because that was the thing to do. But I went to school to take care of my grades just so I could play sports. But after working a couple of jobs towards the latter part of my high school stint, I figured out that the jobs that I was working with is in the grocery store as a bagger, and then working at Allstate at $10 an hour, staying at home with my dad was decent money. But I just figured out that if I wanted to do something beyond that, at that point, that I had to do something different. Never thought about the military, never thought about joining. I did have some family that served in the Army some years back during Vietnam. But my parents were adamant about, hey, the military is definitely not a place for Black men at that time, and even in the 90s. So when my father found out that I joined the military, he was a little disappointed, to say the least. but it's grown on him just as it has grown on myself and my family. And like I said, I came in originally 98. I came in as an aircrew life support technician, then cross-trained into CE and been CE ever since. So just like everybody else has been in the military, several bases, had some ups and downs throughout my career. But I would think as I fast forward to the latter part of my career over the last 5 to 6 years, there's a certain level of energy I think that's beginning to transpire just because I think it finally clicked.
Yeah.
And so that energy, that fired up stuff that people see or hear or feel, even at 21 years of service now, is kind of coming from that same competitive edge as a kid. Obstacles, people telling me what I cannot do, and I've kind of internalized it and just letting it to continue to grow organically.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. That is really awesome. Man, and you know, you and I, man, we've had a lot of discussions already over the last over the last month. We've had quite a few conversations, right? And and a topic that we talked about recently amongst friends was vulnerability. And I think that's and that we could talk about vulnerability in so many different ways. But the more I think about it, the more vulnerability plays a key role in leadership and basically any like healthy relationships, right? But specifically now, for our listeners, we're recording this on 6 June. We're in the wake of much racial controversy, disturbance, but also, in my opinion, a lot of growth as a nation, at least an opportunity for that, right? Now, this topic, like I said, could go in many different directions, but I was thinking, like, Shamon, share what are your thoughts on vulnerability and its role in relationships and leadership?
I think vulnerability within that, regard it's tough right now in particular. I mean, it's always been tough to be vulnerable at any point in your life, but right now it's even more challenging for some, and maybe some it's more challenging than others. But you have to be willing to tell folks what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you have a difficult time of telling people, hey, I just don't know, I don't understand, and I don't have that experience, you begin to disconnect from people that you want to connect with. But once you embrace that idea that you don't know and that you are willing to learn from others, and how you do that is either sharing your stories where either you got it wrong, you messed up, you made some mistakes that really either jeopardize you both personally and or professionally, then you have a better chance of creating a dialogue with those you lead, and it begins to cross lines of race, color, ethnicity, religion, etc. Because then you appear to be a lot more open, right, to not necessarily just agree with them, because you can agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessarily always about agreeing. It's about understanding the plight of the person you're talking to, the people you're leading. And if we can disagree respectfully, then we may have a chance to kind of move forward on some commonalities that we can then focus in on. But that does start with being vulnerable. And I do it in many ways. And like I said, that's either through the storytelling and then some open-ended questions that I may have for them. And then I just ask people, hey, what do you want to know? Whether it's personal, professional, like I don't just walk up to people, introduce myself, and then start telling vulnerable stories. Right. But I do just say, hey, if you have some questions, like there's nothing off the there's nothing off the list.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm open.
So is this something that you think that has come to you recently, like the past couple of years, or is this something that you've always sort of vibed with?
I would say I probably always vibe with it. I think I probably become more in touch with it probably over the last 6 years, maybe about 2014. I think when I took a special duty and I got outside of CE.
Yeah.
And then I was forced to supervise some women, some other ethnicities.
Yeah.
And in my career field as an electrician, I work with predominantly males, and the squadron is predominantly males. And so that interaction with women is limited. And so I had to be understanding quite different than I would typically be, because I grew up with brothers. I only had one sister, and we would hammer all the time. We treated just like the guys. But I had to learn quickly that wasn't going to work with someone I had never knew, and someone that was looking at me as, okay, this is my supervisor. She's a young white lady. And like I said, I really just had to spend some time getting to know her and the rest of the team, because we had maybe about 4 or 5 females on the team as Airman Dome leaders, and
Yeah,
it was a challenge for me to navigate. So I wasn't always good at it.
well, and I tell you what, because I was a former CAA, so I can't say I was a former CAA. I guess I am a former CAA, not was. I'll always be a former CAA. But that though, anytime, as a CAA, our job is to, and a lot of times, I'm not sure if it's changed in the past several years, but we really promoted special duties. Like we wanted people to step outside their comfort zone, and I think what kept people from doing that was that vulnerability. Because they become experts in whatever their craft is and their skill is. And so the Air Force was saying, hey, we want you to not only be experts in your craft, but we want you to be experts in people and step outside your comfort zone and take on some different type of responsibilities. And I think when you do that, you're learning something new, but at the same time, you have a new team that you're assigned to, and you got to learn all those complexities of the different personalities. They can open you up to some interesting situations. And so you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to step up and go, you know what, I'm ready to accept this challenge and kind of admit that I don't know everything, because I think that's in my experience, that's what kept people from wanting to do special duties, because now it was something they were uncomfortable with and wasn't sure about. And, but in your role, I'm sure, it wouldn't exist if we didn't have special duties. And we need people who are willing to step out and get uncomfortable and do different things.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah, I think, Scott and I were talking about this not long ago. It's like, what's the direction of how we're that talent management piece, getting people into those positions, because there's such an interesting dichotomy between sending somebody out to go do it that wants to do it. And sometimes maybe the person that wants to do it isn't the right person to do it. Right. And then also sending people out that are equipped, but can also grow in that position, but maybe they don't want to do it. And I share the story all the time. I did not want to go do my special duty. I was not inclined to do it. And I will say it's 100% the reason what Scott just said. It was because I didn't want to step out my comfort zone. I was doing good at what I was doing. Right. And I thought I was good. Right. And then Chief Patricia English at the time, Master in English, she said, no, you're going to go do this. And I had faith in her, and I went to go do it.
With me.
And then I grew. I mean, I grew a lot. And just like what you said, Shamon, I was like, I had to work with 17 civilians, all civilian. I was like the only military. And then I had another one in there, but it was like 2 of us military with 17 civilians. You're learning how to supervise them. You're also learning how to talk to them, because it's very different. A majority of them were also female, right? So you're kind of learning the diverse perspectives behind it. And it was such a growing opportunity for me. And I think that we miss those if we don't take those shots.
Absolutely. I mean, it was difficult. I didn't want to go do the special duty either. And when it came up,
all 3 of us.
No, I didn't. I always wanted to go do something different. I always wanted to go do something different, because I'm competitive, right? I'm a bit of a busybody. It's hard for me to kind of just do one thing for a long period of time. Like, you tell me I'm gonna go be in this position for 6, 7, 8 years, I'm gonna turn it down. But I knew this was a 2-year stint, and when the position came available for NCRC, I applied for that. And then to make a long story short, I just got the phone call back from at the time, the superintendent, who's now Chief Hansen at CE. And he said, hey, Sergeant Seals, I got some good and bad news. I was like, jeez. And he said, which one you want first? I was like, don't matter, just go ahead with it, man. And I knew it was some bad news. He's like, the bad news is I'm not going to hire you for the NCRC. I was like, man, here we go again. Okay. And he's like, but I got some good news. The good news is we have a position for you that hasn't been advertised, hasn't been shared with anyone yet. But we need someone with your character, your quality and skill sets to fill this role, because I have several NCOs who need some guidance and direction. And so to me, that sounded like, okay, you want me to come do your dirty work. And that's what I felt at that point in my career. I'm like, man, I'm always the guy that's going to have to clean up programs and systems. I don't want to do that anymore. It's my time to shine. I'm just being honest. And I talked to my wife about it, and I told her, like, hey, I didn't get the job. So I was a little disappointed. And she said, why are you so down? And I was like, he offered me a job, but I don't want that. He wanted me to go work in the campus. I got the largest, he tried to make it pretty with having the largest campus with the most rooms and the most NCOs to lead. I was like, I don't want that. I want it all. You're not going to take credit for, all my hard work. And she said, "Oh, that's interesting." She's like, "But you love sports." I was like, "You absolutely." She's like, "But you love football, right?" I was like, "Absolutely." She's like, "So if you got drafted by the Cleveland Browns, no knock to the Cleveland Browns at the time, no knock to my Cleveland Brown friends, fans out there, but this is 2014." And she said, "If you got drafted by the Cleveland Browns, would you not want to go play?" I was like, "No, heck no, I would go play." She's like, "That's interesting. They haven't won a game in a couple of years. You would want to go play for them?" I was like, "It doesn't matter. I'm on the
playing.
team."
Yeah.
And she says, "But you know you're not going to start your first couple of years." I was like, "It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm on the team. You don't get it. You don't know what it takes to be in the NFL." And she says, "That's crazy." She's like, "But you're willing to go sit for 2-3 years knowing you're not going to play." I was like, "But there's a good chance that if he gets hurt, my time is coming." And she's like, "Okay. Someone's created a position for you, though. They haven't advertised it. They told you they want you. You just have to make the decision. And you don't want to play because it's not what you want." I was like, "Man, leave me alone. I ain't got time for that. I don't want to hear that mess." But she was right. So I thought about it, took the job, and like I said, it's been all uphill from there. And like I said, to work with some young ladies, I had my hands full, but that was because I had to learn how to communicate. I had to kind of get out of this narrow-minded, hey, we have to do things like this here. So they had to teach me a lot. They had to teach me how to communicate with them. They had to teach me how to listen, be a little bit more understanding, a little bit more thoughtful. The list goes on and on. So, but yeah, it was a huge learning curve. And then my career has catapulted, like I said, and hasn't looked back since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Those are some qualities. And it's interesting. You said that you had someone reach out to you, say, I need someone of your character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes those are things that are hard to capture on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
You can look at someone's EPR when people apply for those jobs and they will give us your, last 8 EPRs, 5 EPRs. It's hard to see character on there. Right. So it's good to have that there's somebody that's reaching out, that's paying attention. Right. And really, we've been using that term deliberate development for a while now, but it sounds like you had somebody that was deliberately developing you, like reaching out to Seals and going, okay, this is the guy that I want to get in the right position. That similar happened to me. I know they don't have FTAC NCOICs anymore, or do they?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay. So I was an FTAC NCOIC at Scott, and I got step promoted to master, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to go back to my career field. And the guy that was sitting in your seat, Al Lewis, he's retired chief now, said, nope, you're going to go be CAA. And I said, nah, I don't know anything about that world. That's not me. And the same. I started having flashbacks when you're telling your story. I just put the stripe on, and at the time, I don't know how it is now, but at the time, you just had to be a master sergeant. And I know after a while they changed it. You had to have the stripe on for a year before you could be in that position. But at that time, he goes, "No, you're going to be the next CAA." And I'm like, I don't know anything about that position. And sure enough, I competed for it and got it. And it's one of those things where I was uncomfortable. I was super uncomfortable because I didn't feel like I was worthy of it. I didn't feel like I had the skill set. But at the same time, I was surrounding myself with great people, and especially a great mentor that, kind of gave me he gave me that caution. Hey, here's what you got to expect. But he also gave me the motivation and support to help me out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that when you talk about going into those positions, and we could tell, and this is just a thought that just popped into my mind. We're saying you're going to learn a lot from those positions, but the more I think about it, that might not be true if you're not willing to be vulnerable and say that you don't understand things and learn, right? I mean, you don't just automatically learn. You got to be open to the growth, right? And I think it's pretty cool what you were talking about is how, you work with females, like predominantly, a group of females, where normally in civil engineer squadron, there's a lot more now than there were, in the past, but for the longest time it was, and it's still not even close to to like the same, you don't have 50% or anything like that, like the normal society, but you have to grow a lot when you're having those conversations. You got to be willing to have those conversations. And a conversation I just had and listened to with on Caleb Vaden's podcast with Nina Troy, and she was talking about some of the stuff, the discrimination that she went through as a female. And I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I was listening to that podcast thinking, have I ever done that before? Have I ever done that inadvertently with an unconscious bias towards a female? And I can't say that I haven't. I'm not sure. I was looking back, I was like, I know I never did anything like that on purpose, but I don't know. I mean, I wonder. And I was talking to her about it later on, and she was like, well, we're all growing, right? I was like, yeah. And I was like, just the fact that I listened to that, understood it, it makes me more aware of those things. But that's me being vulnerable. It's like, I have no idea. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. And wow, and I think it's important for us to have those conversations and be willing to have those conversations, And so what do you think is the reason why, we're having a hard time right now? There are people that are not willing to have these tough conversations about the current events that are happening right now, Shamon. And I don't know what it is. Is it the fact that people don't want to admit that they don't know the answer, so they just avoid it? I mean, it's a complex issue, right?
Absolutely. It's very complex. It's layered. It's deep. It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a difficult, nut to crack all the way around. And I would tell you, with some of the things that I have either shared either on social media platforms and or discussed over the phone or through text message with either friends, colleagues, and family, we all see it slightly different. And so it may be difficult to identify what that thing is or those things are that helps us move forward. But I will tell you, for me, in my personal opinion, this is not me speaking for the Black community, but this is how I see it. And I think this kind of connects to any type of relationship. When we are unable to address or speak to the heart of the true problem or the core of it, and we're unwilling is the word to put some words and language to the issue, opposed to being very vague and general. Because a lot of dialogue that I hear now is just, hey, can we just talk about how we can move forward, and we just be good human beings, and if we just all work at this together and find solutions and talk about it and tell stories, then this will all go away. No, it's going to come back. Unfortunately, that's just my opinion, is that these things systemically will stay in place because we haven't really clearly communicated to the world, to each other, face to face, with the language that says there's some deep-seated issues with America and its existence and what it has done historically to Black and brown people. And it becomes extremely more difficult for white men and women to communicate what that is. And when you are growing up in American culture through education, opportunities, and you've worked hard, and you live in a complete bubble that does not exist at your dinner table, at your workspace, in your schools, it's from afar through TV, music, media, you can dismiss it. You can be ignorant about it, conveniently. But a lot of people talk about how they're going to take a break from social media and unplug. But unfortunately for me, and even, I love my Black skin. I can't unplug from being Black.
Yeah.
There are no breaks to being Black. There's no weekends off. I can't take my uniform off and then get the same level of respect that people look at me and smile and shake my hand and pat me on the back because they just think I'm a good person. They only engage with me because they think I'm a solid military member. So, but it's a difficult conversation to have. But like I said, I've gotten a lot of negative feedback inside my social platforms. And then, like I said, I had to take I had to find a better way to respond to people who left comments that maybe disagree with me without turning them off. So there's an opportunity for me to, and others who follow and agree, to educate without being dismissive. But that piece is the challenge that even myself, because Black people have a difficult time of even being able to articulate clearly what they need, what we need. That says, what do you want from me? What do you want me to acknowledge? Because we spend so much time psychologically trying to figure out how do I say this without making them feel bad? Because we know for all too well, we know what it's like to someone has made us feel bad, dismiss us, be the blame, talk about us, create stereotypes. And people may feel like, okay, well, if I say, hey, at the core of this issue, white America has systemically and institutionally created racism and invoked racism and fear amongst Black and brown people since its existence. Does that say that every white person is racist? No. Does they have racist tendencies? Do they have any ill will or heart or hatred towards Black or brown people? No. But it does just speak to the fact of, hey, why there's some connective tissue to our past, to what they see going on today. And when you do that acknowledgement, and being vulnerable to say, okay, I can acknowledge that. I can see that there's an issue in all these different states all around the world. If it's not, do you think it's just about being selfish and going to looting and all that kind of stuff? So that's the difficulty. That's a web that is spun around this topic that we see right now as a hot topic, obviously, in America.
Yeah, I think, and to kind of add to that, I think in some cases, some white people need to be vulnerable to getting their feelings hurt, because we want to pretend it's not like that. We want to pretend, hey, everything's equal opportunity. We got laws in place to change that. But I can tell you, I've grown up with friends. I grew up on the East Coast, Washington, D.C. In the 80s, it was, majority Black. And friends of mine grew up in the same opportunities. But I've seen it where different things, different people related to them different than they would me. Right. They treated them different than they would me, even though we had the same education, same background, hung around the same neighborhoods. And so part of my ownership is first acknowledging that it exists, right? Like, I got to be vulnerable and go, you know what? There's something to it. Because I used to be against it. I used to be like, right. Nah, man, we came up with same opportunities. We have, it's all, but
technology has removed that ability to deny it. Technology has said, here it is in your face. And people are like, oh my goodness, like what? This is an isolated incident. This is, okay, a handful of things across the state, but it's not that bad. No, this is what people have been dealing with for years, but you didn't believe us. You didn't talk to us. You said, hey, kneeling was wrong. We couldn't do it peacefully. Now you're complaining about not doing it peacefully. Mm-hmm. So you're right to that point. Very, very right.
Yeah. Just like you said, just at least admitting that you don't know, right? And that it's there. And I mean, like, just to start there, right? And I've seen it on both sides. I posted something yesterday on my social media. It was just like, hey, if somebody don't agree with you or you don't agree with them, it's okay to not retaliate. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't have to retaliate. Like, well, like we can ask a question and actually have genuine curiosity and explain and be vulnerable to the fact that you don't know. And it's like, it's all over the place with that. And we had a Prime B formation, which is our contingency formation for our listeners that aren't in CE. We had that recently, and my boss and I got out there. He's Caucasian male, and we both were talking. We had our masks on. It was really a really weird formation, right? We're all spread out, but we talked. The first thing we said was, "Hey, we don't have all the answers, but we definitely want to hear you. You know, I mean, and we're here for you. You know, but we don't have all the answers, right? We don't know the answers, and we don't know how to feel the same way you feel, you know? So everybody wants to talk about this. We're here for you. And I think I talked to him for like an hour and a half the day before on the topic. And like I said before, it was like, we walked away with way more questions than we had answers, but I still felt better about having the conversation. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it felt good to know that, okay, I'm able to have this conversation with somebody, and we can figure out as a leadership team how we're going to approach it, you know? And I think those are things like vulnerability. This is so important, and we keep going back to that word, but I think there's a lot to that word and what we're dealing with right now.
Right. And I think in addition to what you're saying there, where it makes us feel good. And I think that's the piece where I would caution people going forward, because without that true acknowledgement, and we kind of skip to the second and third step, and we kind of call ourselves saying, hey, we've spoken to our folks. We've had some dialogue.
We check the block.
And it makes us feel like, you know, unconsciously it makes us feel like, okay, we're doing our part.
Right.
You know, we're doing that. We're getting after it. We're not going to see the change. We get it. But hey, I've done my part. But unfortunately, there's some things not. So like I was talking about, just real quick, I'm going to read something that someone shared with me based on one of the posts I put on there. I'm not going to share his name, just keep it private. But his response was in reference to my 3 things or 4 things that I asked people to kind of avoid when having these dialogues. One of them was, don't start out by asking about the rioting and looting. And I told him some specific reason that's not the priority. So it's not saying that we condone it. It's just, but that's not where you want to start. The next one was Black on Black violence. The next one after that was whether or not you believe this exists in the Air Force or the military or society, or do you believe, I can't remember the 4th one off the top of my head, but it was surfaced around that. So he asked a question and said, hey, well, he went right to it. So what about the Black on Black violence? And what's that? I was like, oh my goodness. So I was like, did you read the video? I mean, did you watch the video and either see number 2? And so I said, let me not respond to him negatively. I went inside his inbox, and I just said, hey man, you can give me a call, we can chat, and we can discuss this. We can agree to disagree on some things, but there's obviously some things that I'm not going to kind of go back and forth with you on. And so I asked him in short, I was like, hey, the question we were talking about earlier, who is at the core of this? Whether it's here, anywhere around the world, when we talk about, invoking fear and hatred and dismissiveness, discrimination and racism, man, I didn't ask for this. Many white people that's born today and living today that love black people, have black people in their family and friends, and they treat some black people better than they treat their own families. Just like I know my neighbors and friends treat me back better than sometimes my own family. They didn't ask for this no more than we'd asked for this here, but there's still some truth to that. And I said, hey, who is at the core of that? So he grazed over it. He didn't ask it. He said, are you accusing people in my race of all the problems in itself? I was like, that's not what I said. I just asked you a question. If you can just speak to the truth, it's simple. This is not rocket science, man. If you've been living here all your life and you see the issues that's going on, you know what it is. His response, I said, facts are facts. If we can speak to that truth, we really have, if we can't speak to that truth, we have no chance of moving forward. I said, call me when we're ready to chat. He says, my family, cousins, have nothing to do with the tragedies that happened recently. I can't blame police brutality on myself. I wasn't there stepping on Mr. Floyd's neck or gunning down Tamir Rice. It is wrong to accuse an entire race for the actions of a few. That tells me he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He thinks that I'm talking about an isolated situation. He thinks that I'm trying to tell him, because of the color of his skin, when he looks in the mirror, that he too is racist. And so we can't have a conversation as to how we move forward until he really understands it. And that takes some time.
That happens. Let's not even talk, if we weren't even talking about this topic at hand, that happens everyday conversations. People just aren't, they're on two different wavelengths,
right?
Whether it's debating, arguing, or having a conversation about two different things, right? And it happens all the freaking time.
Well, it's like when we teach like conflict resolution, we stick to one problem at a time. And so when people start bringing in those whataboutisms, it's like no. We're let's focus on this issue. Don't bring in, well, what about that? What about this? What about that? Because you're taking away from that issue that we're trying to explain is a problem. And I think and people do that because they want to deflect, because again, it's their. And I'm just assuming they are afraid to get their feelings hurt.
I mean, what's the harm? I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be white. I've never had a chance to be white. So I don't know what it's like to sit at dinner table and tell your kids to say, hey, look, I know they don't teach this in school. I know they don't talk about this on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, any network. Right? And so you may not hear this. So it may be tough to be able to swallow. But if you go to school with some folks who are black and brown, right, they may not be so comfortable with talking about these issues either, but you need to have some awareness, right? Where it's not that you or I hate black people. It's not that you or I are racist, but because of our past, right, our culture has created this divisiveness that people that look like you and I, right, have created division and have made it extremely difficult for people just to live free, happy. And if that is the case, that's a little bit of difficult. I don't know what that is. You can help me even understand, what is that difficulty, if at all?
No, my personal opinion, I think the difficulty is everybody makes it about people make that topic or whatever it is about themselves. Right. So if it's an issue and then you make it about yourself and you get defensive because you're like, no, that's not me. I'm not racist. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, no one said you're racist, but we're saying that racism exists. You know what I mean? Or there's issues that there's systemic racism. And it's like, no, wait, what? I'm not racist. Like, it's like, why are you attacking me? I'm not racist. It's like, I'm not attacking you. I'm not attacking you. We're having a discussion.
Yeah. So someone is telling you from their heart and soul something that's hurting them, and the first reaction is, but I didn't do that to you. I
didn't do it.
It wasn't me. Don't be mad at me. No. Listen to what's hurting that person. Right. And then understand why that person's hurt or feeling the way they're feeling. And again, it's I think it's just a part of humanity where we're so self-centered.
We're wired that way.
We're wired that way. And it goes back to being vulnerable. We're afraid to be vulnerable and hear things that about us, or maybe not about us, that we don't want to hear. right? We don't want to hear that I could in some way unconsciously be guilty of some of this, or someone in history in my family could be guilty of this, and people don't want to hear that. They just want to kind of absolve themselves of the problem and make it sound like that they're clear and free, and that's not the case. And I think like you said earlier, vulnerable. You have to be willing to be vulnerable to hear some things that you don't want to hear in order to grow. And that's for everybody.
And maybe not even what you don't want to hear. Maybe it's even like what you don't even want to tell yourself inside, right? Because I'll be like, the reason why I shared that story that from that other podcast with the sexism, I mean, basically the unconscious bias that comes with that. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I must have probably done something like that before.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, so opening it up to the aperture to at least be open to the fact that I might have done something inadvertently. It doesn't mean I'm sexist. It means that maybe I done something that made someone feel that way inadvertently. And you really look back and like, that was the wrong thing to do because it was very insensitive. And then you start looking at a lot of things. I personally started looking at I know I've grown like tremendously in just the last 2 weeks, just thinking about some more of this stuff. And in my mind, I thought, why did I have such a hard time acknowledging? I want to say acknowledging. It doesn't mean I didn't know it was there, but why did I give credence? Why was it so hard for me to give credence to systemic racism? I knew it was there. I mean, I got an undergrad in social sciences, so it's not like I didn't study this stuff and understand how a lot of this stuff happened, right? I mean, I'm reading books specifically on racism, you know what I mean? Like I took a class specifically on, society's racism. So like, what is going on inside of me that I guess what I was saying was I wasn't acknowledging it enough to have a conversation about it, right? And what was going on, and I realized just by having conversation with people and just me talking out loud and me thinking about it in my internalizing, I had a block, and that block was personal accountability versus influence of your environment, right? And my mind has always wanted to go towards personal accountability, and I made it so it blocked, right, some of the other stuff because the way I was raised and the way I grew up in very bad neighborhoods and was able to get to where I'm at now, and I wasn't able to see past that block, right, until I acknowledged that the block existed, right? And then when I acknowledged the block existed, that was able to move, and I was able to understand a little bit more. And that was literally me having to have those tough conversations with myself and being vulnerable to the fact that I need to do better. You know what I mean? And I think that was a big part of it. Like, and I know we keep on throwing this word vulnerability out, but that was critical. It was key for me to even see more. I think that was key.
The way, one of the ways I've been looking at it lately is, even if I may not be directly guilty of something, if I'm dismissive of it,
right,
as being a reality, if I go, that doesn't happen. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, I'm contributing to it. I'm contributing to the problem. And so it's just one of those things where, we keep, like you said, we use that word vulnerability a lot, but you have to be willing to own up to your piece of it. Whether you're directly contributing to it or not, you do have some sort of influence on it.
Absolutely right. I mean, it's just like when you look at back in the day, when Black people were either hung, beaten, drugged through the streets, and there was a celebration. But I would like to believe that there were a lot of great and good white people that totally disagreed with racism and the things that were being done to Black people. But because of the culture and the environment and their life, right, it became a norm. They became desensitized to it, and their silence became complicit.
Exactly.
And although they didn't agree, they didn't perform any of these acts towards Black people. They never owned slaves. They never talked condescending to Black people, whatever it was. That complicit silence is so dangerous. And I think that's what you see is happening right now, is why folks feel it's okay to just be quiet. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm ignorant. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm not smart on the topic, and so I won't speak up on this. But when you just see something that's right and wrong, wrong is wrong, and there's no color attached. There's no gender attached. It's wrong. And so that's why there's a lot of animosity or anger, frustration surrounding this. And then there's another part, like we always like to say, is a tale of two Americas, right? One that you live in a bubble that the narrative is told that America is this melting pot of this here and it's great and it's diversity. So it is, in a sense, great and has a lot of opportunity, but we don't tell the narrative about the destruction, you know, the deceit, the evilness that's at the core of that America, because on the greatness of America is on the backs of the people who were been extracted for their goods, their work ethic, you name it. Let me just make sure I not take that call. I apologize. But yeah, it's just a difficult situation for people to really acknowledge. But when you're talking about, okay, well, I see it going on, but I'm just going to turn the blind eye. I'm gonna go back to work because I know I'm not supposed to talk about it. And so for Black people, we don't even like to say the word, hey, you know, it's other people that treat us. Like, okay, well, be specific. Who are the other people? Because there's a connotation to it, like, oh, I'm trying to be divisive, or I'm trying to create division. And that's against what I really believe in, because I know what that feels like. But you have to be open. You have to be unapologetic about the truth. It is not demonizing anyone. It is just saying, hey, can we speak to this? Because then it's a layered conversation that goes forward. And that's how we can get better.
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think more now, and it's probably technology has a lot to do with it too, is that I think more people are willing to have that conversation and open their eyes to things. And I think, you know, it's just very strange that we're getting hit with multiple things right now with the COVID, with this. And this isn't obviously something new. It's just the newest thing that happened, right? When it comes to racism, it's been
all at
forever,
the same,
you know?
all at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
People like, that's what I said. This isn't just happening by mistake. I don't think this is me. I'm a spiritual person, but like this could have happened at any time.
Right.
Obviously, this has been going on for years.
Yeah, right. It's been happening, right?
All right. So before it to happen now in the midst of COVID, right, where people are out of work. And so these protests wouldn't be the same protests if people were actually going back to work. Because if they had a place to go Monday through Friday, a lot of people wouldn't say, hey, heck, I ain't got nothing to do. Hey, we're going to march anyway. Right. And so this is happening, you know, even the world has been impacted. They're protesting in London and other countries. And
Belgium. And yeah.
Right. It's just, like I said, it's just weird to see. And then how difficult it is for people to still acknowledge. It's like, man, you mean to tell me all 50 states? There's multiple cities in all 50 states that are protesting this. And people still believe that there's nothing wrong. And this is just unruly people who don't want America to be good, don't want our people to have opportunity, don't want them to have businesses and live life and have freedoms and all that kind of stuff. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I think, like you said, there's so many layers to it. I think some people, like you said, they lived in an environment where they never had to deal with anything, so it doesn't affect them. And that's what Mike Holland was like, well, yeah, if you lived in a perfect neighborhood, it didn't affect you, then why would you care? You know, like there's a lot of thoughts there that people just kind of run through their minds. And then some of it, I think, is, you know, outrage culture overall for a while has been going on. So I think some people are like, oh, this is just that again. And it's not, right? It's not. It's not. People aren't just being outraged about nothing. It's like being outraged about something that's legitimate and real. So I think there's, you know, some of that. And then there's just, like I said, so many different layers to it. It makes things very challenging. But you know, it's a weird thing that you just said that about, well, it kind of feels like everything's happening like this for a reason. Because I had the same thought. I was like, you know, because would we be like having this conversation, you know, or would people be having as many of the conversations? I mean, Shamon, I've known you for a while on social media. We've probably talked more in the last month and a half during COVID, or 2 months because of this, right? Because of COVID, you know? So I think that it's actually a unique opportunity, right? And people don't even want to say that, because you're like, wait, people are dying out there of this sickness and you're saying this is an opportunity. I'm like, well, let's all like separate our emotions from things and see things for what it is, you know?
And let me say this, how dangerous this is, because, and I don't mean to say that, hey, rioting and looting is a good cause at all. Don't condone it. It does nothing to help the cause or the issues that are facing the country. But I will say this here. Black and brown people can't fix this problem themselves, because we didn't create the problem. We didn't create the problem. We're not, like, there's a lot of byproduct and or symptoms that come from the issues that are systemic in our culture, but we do need help. So there is some self-accountability and things that we have to do within our communities to kind of help ourselves in moving forward together with economic development and ownership, with education. There are some responsibilities that says, okay, well, protesting is the first piece. What is your plan moving forward? Without always asking for someone to relieve or move their neck or their knee from your neck so you can breathe, right? You have to force the issue. And so when you talk about these things being uncomfortable, there was some hesitation from people like myself, for years that knew these things were wrong and never felt the safe space to even speak up. And so there's some torment that you deal with ourselves where it pulls me to emotions like, man, I've sat here for 21 years. I've known this has happened. And I have not had the courage to say anything because I've been too afraid that the institution that I have committed to, the institution I support, the men and women who I've come in love will no longer accept me because of the truths that I need them to face with me. Because I don't really believe that they accept me. And that's the way Black America really feels.
Yeah.
That I'm respected in uniform, but when I take off the uniform, they just complainers. Let it kind of pipe down, and we'll go back to some sense of normalcy, and everything will be okay. It's not a problem. And that infuriates people. And that's why I say we're going to come back to this issue if we don't take advantage of that unique opportunity for all people to speak up. And that's what's really encouraging, is that you see the protests out there that look completely different than it did in the 60s. Where people are supporting us, and that's going to grow. I like the fact that our senior leaders in the military are beginning to have the courage to speak up on social media, through email, through having conversations. People are reaching out, and that's why I put the video out there. Chief Bogdan are doing some things to speak out and post things on your page to say, okay, I get it. Black Lives Matter is not a saying that all lives don't matter. It's just saying this is an important topic because if all lives matters, Black and brown people would not be treated like this here. So that's the significance behind why we need to be able to support movements like Black Lives Matters. It is not being dismissive to any other ethnicity that suffer from racism and discrimination. But what's underneath that umbrella and the beauty of Black people, Black and brown people, because the world has evolved from Black and brown people, they too are included in that conversation. So when we are treated fairly, we make sure everybody's taken care of. Don't matter what the color of your skin. We're going to take care of our Latino community, our Asian community, our Muslim community. It doesn't matter. We're going to take care of everybody.
I'll say it takes more than 100 years to fix a 400-year problem.
It does.
You know what I mean? Like we can't just go, okay, let's just have the conversation and be done with it, right? Let's get back to peace and love and all that stuff. It's got to be an ongoing process, and we've talked about this on our episode with Mike Holland, that it's got to be. Mike and I used to have these conversations all the time. We were next door neighbors when we were stationed in Travis, and when this whole thing first came out with George Floyd, I was angry because I'm thinking to myself, we've had these conversations. Why is this still happening? But that was conversations that Mike and I had, right? It wasn't the whole world having. But I think the whole world needs to have these conversations, and they need to be continuous. We're not going to be able to fix it 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. It's got to be ongoing.
Absolutely. Chief, can I be honest?
Yeah.
And I wish we were live right now, because I think some people see the energy and the fired up, right? But there's times where I go for walks, man, and I'm sitting very heavy. I haven't been sleeping for the past couple of weeks. I'm quite sure a lot of people, no matter what your color skin is, it's been tough to swallow what's going on in America. But the struggle that I really have, and many people that looks like me across the country, man, it moves us to emotions. That I have a 18-year-old son, and I have to have those conversations with him in a balanced way, that I have fear. I have fear that my son won't come home. Mm-hmm. And these are great. They are great boys, great young men. He's a college student, been an honor roll student for most of his life, works at Panera Bread, getting ready to start another job, has been working with his younger brother to start a lawnmower business in a predominantly white neighborhood. But they too live in a bubble. They don't know what it's like growing up in a city that's predominantly Black. They never went to a predominantly Black school. So what they see and are experiencing right now is solely through the media. It is not their day-to-day life. And so I am the only connection to the reality of what is going on to the world. And I have to have those heart-to-heart conversations. Say, hey, man, I know you just run the store for ice cream, but it's too late. I can't afford you to get put over right now. I know you like some white girls, and I know a lot of white girls like you. And I know you dating them, and they say you can come by the house. But I can't afford for you to go by the house and sit in their basement, and their dad walks in, and he didn't invite you, she did. And he just shoots you because he thinks that you're there unwarranted. And then because we have laws that are written a certain way that would excuse those behaviors and acts that says, okay, well, he was in my house and I thought he was attacking my daughter, and she would be silent. It's many cases like that that puts fear. It says, okay, he had a light out, or he stopped and rolled and he took his phone out of his pocket and you shot him 8 times. Man, that's real fear. The psychological, trauma that people have to live with when they see that over and over, it is heavy. It is extremely, extremely emotional. And then there's a conflict that says, now I'm gonna go ahead and don this uniform, and I'm gonna go fight what many of us have believed to be the core of our country that says I'm gonna defend it, and I'm willing to risk my life for it. But when I take it off, there's nobody there to defend me. There's nobody there to protect my son. And no matter how hard I work, when I walk out the house and I walk back to the house at night yesterday, I broke down in tears. I had to take a knee because I said, when I'm not around, there is no man that doesn't look like him that's willing to protect him. That won't even be willing to tell the truth about what they have done to people that look like him and I. They're cowards, son. So be cautious of the people, no matter what the color of their skin is. Be nice to people, love on people, pray for them, forgive them, but stand up for what is right. Because if you don't, no one else will for you. So I know I don't want to take that off track, man, but I get emotional about this stuff, man.
You didn't take us off track, man. That was powerful. I mean, it really was. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because like I said, I've grown so much over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, about a lot of this stuff. And it's because conversations like this with people like you who really be honest, not just be honest on the offensive, honest on yourself too, your perspectives that you share. And these, I've had more conversations like this with people at work or through Zoom calls, people that I'm not even that close with yet, just having conversations about it. And like I said, continue to learn. There was a saying, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was like, the more you learn, the more the plane of your own ignorance reveals itself. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm like, I'm feeling that lately, right? The more educated, the more smart I think I am, or the more, more wisdom that's being poured into, the more I realize I don't know, what I don't know. And I don't want to sound like I'm deflecting anything. What I'm actually meaning by that is that I think it's a good start. You know what I mean? It's a good start. So, man, Shamon, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. I mean, we could talk about this for like 7 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, you know what I mean? And love to run it back with you sometime about, different topics, you know what I mean? About a variety of other topics, because you're an amazing leader. And I really was upset that you didn't come to work with me when I was in Korea, but I'm glad that we've been able to.
You was upset. I was upset too. hey, and I know my family's waiting for me to retire, right? And I've been thinking about it. I should say to myself, man, if I get one more chance, maybe I can go back. But maybe I can go to Korea one more time. But you be trying to scheme ways like, man, I can just, hey, I didn't want to. They need me to go back.
Yeah, I know. We got power outages to fix.
Hey, I'll say, from my experience, you're in a great spot right now, man. You got I think a great gig, a lot of cool responsibility, and you're 4 or 5 hour drive from home, so that's not too bad.
And they just extended the travel restrictions too, from 250 to 350, so I can go home.
Oh, nice.
And see some family and friends so often. But you're right. I'm enjoying the job. It's been a complete blessing. I would not have imagined I would be where I am 6 years ago. So we talk about that position, DSD, and how it's catapulted me, man. My career has changed, and a lot of it was my mental state. It wasn't anyone else holding me back. It was me holding me back. And if I could say one last thing, Joe, before we, disconnect, I know we talked about ownership, acknowledging some things to stay away from and avoiding when beginning to have these tough conversations. I want to make sure that many leaders across the force and people just in society know it's okay to be angry. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be disappointed, frustrated, mad, bitter, but there is a sense of responsibility, at least that I feel for myself. Being a senior master sergeant in the United States Air Force, I still believe that, man, we get it right. We do a lot of great things. And although we have a lot of progress to make, a lot of areas of improvement, I owe it to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
I owe it to the men and women who aspire to wear the uniform. I owe it to men and women who can only dream to be where we have climbed to be right now. And it is my responsibility to channel that anger, that frustration, that bitterness, and that rage, and all of that and communicate it in a way that's catered in a way that says we have to speak, we have to shed light on the truth, but then we need to figure out how to move through this gracefully together, and understanding that some folks aren't always going to move as fast as we move through this process. But we can't disconnect and let them go, because that is the same thing that has been done to many of us for years.
Yeah.
And so tomorrow is going to look like a completely future. But if you don't realize the moment right now, if you don't get a hold and figure out those emotions, you lose yourself and you lose the people that you're going to be responsible for leading. And it is important for all of us to do that together. And I don't care what your skin color is.
It's powerful.
There's no better way to wrap it up, brother. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for spending the time with us, man. And to all our listeners, as always, be safe, stay healthy, and llamas are out. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Llama Lounge podcast. Be sure to visit the homepage for links to products and services related to this episode. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice. See you next time.